Bitcoin price has been suppressed for a very long time. We should have hit these levels at maybe 100K a few years ago. But if you look at the amount of fraud that was perpetrated by FTX and other companies, that's really what stole the 100K from Bitcoin in 2021. We should have been there, but they stole that. It all unraveled. And we learned that FTX was selling Bitcoin that they didn't have even. So it's not even, it's just selling fake Bitcoin.
Big fraud.
That did not exist. And it's possible other groups did the same thing and it all untangled and then Bitcoin crashed because people lost confidence in it. And we've recovered, but then we still had a little bit of that untangling to do with GBTC, which is all interconnected to the prior fraud. This time it's just Barry Silbert's group, DCG, right, and Genesis. So that's still untangling now. And I think this is why we saw a muted response when the ETFs launched. But it's very clear if you're looking carefully that there's a massive amount of demand that's increasing constantly from the ETFs. And that will outpace any of the untangling of fraudulent activities from Genesis and DCG now. So given all of that, and given that we've effectively almost reached the previous all-time highs pre-halving, I don't see it being impossible that we see 1 million this year.
Samson Mow is the CEO of Jan3, a Bitcoin technology company focused on accelerating hyper-Bitcoinization. Samson is best known for his work with El Salvador's Bitcoin initiatives and his efforts in nation-state Bitcoin adoption around the world. In a recent interview, Samson Mow revealed a fascinating perspective on certain forces that hinder Bitcoin's price appreciation and global adoption. Currently, Bitcoin's price hovers around $66,000, but Mow believes that this would have been higher if not for certain factors that sabotaged it. According to Samson Mow, Bitcoin's price has been artificially low due to significant fraudulent activities by companies like FTX, which sold Bitcoin that they didn't own and undermined market confidence. This fraud caused panic among investors, leading to a crash in Bitcoin's price. Although Bitcoin since then has recovered, issues related to past fraud, particularly involving the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, Digital Currency Group, and Genesis, still linger. Mow notes that although the launch of Bitcoin ETFs did not immediately cause a massive price surge, there is a gradually increasing interest in Bitcoin from these funds. He believes this demand will eventually outweigh the negative impacts of the ongoing resolution of fraudulent activities. Given these factors and Bitcoin's resilience, Mow is optimistic that Bitcoin could potentially reach $1 million by the end of the year. We will now bring you clips of Samson Mow as he reveals these eye-opening insights. Give this video a like to show your support and subscribe to the channel to always be updated with the latest crypto news. Thanks and enjoy.
The Bitcoin adoption aspect is critical, I believe, and this is why a lot of us are galvanized around Jan3 in our mission, because we can see Bitcoin changing the government, changing the relation between the state and a citizen of the state, whereby you're not just a tax slave anymore, but you're someone that has to be respected and listened to because now they can't just take your stuff, right? You can't print money anymore. Like, inflation is basically hidden money printing. People don't realize it, but you can print money explicitly or implicitly through inflation. You can tax people explicitly or tax people secretly through inflation. And with Bitcoin, you can't do that anymore. And if you look at a lot of government policy, the bad policy, most people would never agree to things like what they're doing. Like in Canada, we have the Arrive Can scandal, or Arrive scam, as they're calling it now.
What is that?
It was during COVID. They had an app that you had to put your vaccination status and update everything every time you entered and left Canada.
Right.
And they spent $84 million on this app that just logged data, basically. And a recent revelation was the CEO of ArriveCan was actually a government employee at the National Defense Department of Defense. So there's a lot of corruption, and Bitcoin can fix all of this, I believe. But the point is, there are a lot of bad things governments can do to people, and Bitcoin removes the ability for them to do that, because now you kind of have to ask people to put up money, whether it's for war or for a Rive can or something, and people wouldn't agree to spending money in that way. So it restores a balance, I believe, to the force. In theory, we could all flee to El Salvador. But then what happens to El Salvador?
Yep.
If every country is a fiat country and controlled by the money printers and we're all in El Salvador, well, they can just nuke us or something, right? So we have to fight back and we have to engage to bring more allies to the Bitcoin. And I think we will get there simply because of necessities. Governments at the end of the day need money. How do you maintain a standing army for defense if you cannot pay the soldiers? If your money is worthless? And we've seen examples of this from history where the government can't pay the soldiers and that's it. If the soldiers want Bitcoin, then maybe you need to have Bitcoin. So it becomes a national imperative for them actually to have sound money. And this is why a lot of governments buy gold, because they know that the fiat money is just a game, a thinly held together by tape game that is going to fall apart at any time. That's why they're buying gold. Bitcoin is just new gold. I believe there are a few other countries too that have Bitcoin mining operations that have yet to reveal them. And this is probably why hash rate has been going parabolic, even though price now is caught up a bit to hash rate growth. But I would say 2 months back, you can see hash rate is outstripping the price. When the halving comes, a lot of these mining entities are going to potentially be underwater. Now, of course, we've caught up, but why is it that when they're technically going to be insolvent or needing to shut down, why is the hash rate still going up? And that's because it's nation states mining. For them, energy is free. Their operating cost is technically zero. It's their own energy. Bitcoin changes people. It makes them less scared of the world, more hopeful. And if we can have politicians that are Bitcoiners, we should have better governments. A lot of this behavior is done out of fear. So Trudeau was scared shitless about the Freedom Convoy, and that's why he did what he did. And it was unconstitutional, and it was wrong, and technically he should be in jail. But that's not how the system works. But the hope is that with getting more politicians into Bitcoin, they will learn about these things. If you look at all of our rights, it's all very weakly held together and very brittle. You think you have rights, but then an emergency act comes along and suddenly you have no rights. You think you have money in the bank and suddenly your bank is frozen for whatever reason. And the thing you have to understand is there's always a reason. The government can find some reason, and that won't stop. I think the only way to stop is that people have to move to that Bitcoin standard where they have their own value. Every right that you have is given to you with conditions. Like in the US, you have the right to free speech and to bear arms. But if you have no money, you can't spend your money, how do you buy the arms? So money is a critical piece of that. And people just have to learn that this is the only way forward. Because when you move the money to another party, you give up sovereignty completely. It's difficult to fully comprehend the relation between all that until you're faced with it. I think this is why, even as despicable as he is, Trudeau did a great service for Bitcoin, because he taught a lot of Canadians that your money in the bank is not your money.
Right.
And people are learning, like in Israel too, that it's not your money. So it's just a learning curve people have to go through. It's difficult to comprehend because we grew up in such a controlled and peaceful environment where it's okay to give your money to the bank to hold on to. And you can take it at any time until suddenly you can't. So it's difficult for people to understand that until they actually face it, I believe. But we live in a world where that's becoming increasingly the norm, where you can't access your money. So it's all accelerating. I think this is why hyper-Bitcoinization is inevitable, because that whole system, the fiat system, the banking system, it's geared towards control. And it's controlled by whoever can control that system. And that's becoming increasingly at odds with ordinary people trying to just live their lives. So everything is driving people to Bitcoin.
Mow criticizes governmental misuse of power. He believes that Bitcoin could reduce such corruption as its fixed supply prevents the kind of arbitrary money printing that leads to inflation, thereby protecting individuals' purchasing power and financial autonomy. He also addresses the limitations of simply fleeing to Bitcoin-friendly countries, pointing out that governments can restrict mobility, as seen during the COVID-19 pandemic. Instead, he believes that more individuals from all around the globe should be engaging with Bitcoin as much as possible to challenge governmental policies worldwide and become a financial revolution much harder to stop. As more people and even nation-states adopt Bitcoin, the flaws of the current fiat-based system, prone to manipulation and control, will further be exposed. As more people learn and shift to Bitcoin and other alternative options, this would lead to a more equitable system where everyone has more control over their finances. Mow sees Bitcoin as a tool for empowering individuals, reducing government overreach, and ultimately driving societal change toward greater transparency and fairness. With all that said, here are more clips of Samson Mow as he shares more enlightening perspectives.
If you can imagine it, think of a government where everyone is a Bitcoiner. You have a base level of understanding in the government now of private property.
Yes.
And why it's important to have your own assets. So I think you would see less collectivism seeping through the shroud, right? Governments are very collectivist in the end of the day, because it's just the incentive structure of how it works, how democracy works. You have to give people something and buy their votes. It sounds bad saying it, but that is really what you're doing, right? You're giving them free stuff to kind of pacify them and buy their votes. Bitcoin teaches you all of these things that are lost. It's almost like the wisdom of the ages that there's no free stuff is lost, because we've grown up in a world of free stuff and easy money where we're stealing from future generations. So if the government is made up of Bitcoiners, they should understand we shouldn't seize people's assets because, you know, I'm a Bitcoiner. I want to have my own keys and I don't want to steal your stuff. And if the general populace also understands Bitcoin and has Bitcoin, then they'll understand too that there is no free stuff. And what we're trying to do at Jan3 with helping the governments mine Bitcoin is a step to getting there, because the government is effectively a large machine that is very hungry for money all the time, but is largely incapable of generating money, except for harvesting it from people. And this is why the alignment of the incentives is completely broken, because they treat you as a resource, right? You're the revenue generator. And I've had discussions with people that say governments should not be in the business of generating money. But no, the machine demands money to pay the government, the public servants. And the only way they can get the money, if not by mining Bitcoin, is by harvesting from you. So if you can get them mining Bitcoin and using all the natural resources at their disposal, and there's a lot of natural resources that can be used to mine Bitcoin, then they can feed themselves. But at the same time, they can learn about what money is and energy is and Bitcoin is, and that sort of heals them. So I believe Bitcoin can fix a lot. We often say Bitcoin fixes this.
How do you see Bitcoin influencing the relationship between governments and citizens in the future? Can Bitcoin truly reduce governmental overreach and corruption, as Mow suggests? Share your opinions in the comments below and continue the discussion. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more insightful discussions on cryptocurrency and finance. Your engagement helps us continue providing valuable content to our audience. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more videos as we go over the latest news in crypto finance, technology, and everything in between. Until next time, happy investing.